Class, in this video, we want to work through the basics of unit conversion. You will often hear in science, you will hear this referred to as dimensional analysis. It's kind of a fancy word for pre-algebra, but it is the same process. And so the process is about dealing with units. And so fundamentally, knowing, there's 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 12 inches in a foot, 3 feet in a yard. These things are very helpful for you to do this. When you first begin, yes, you may have to go and look and remind yourself of how many seconds are in a minute or in a day or how many days in a year. Those little bits of information will greatly assist you. But I'm going to try to show you a very basic, kind of formulaic way of doing this. And we'll start with our first example, going from 12 yards 2 feet. And it's very helpful to know where you begin, what unit you are beginning with, and what is your destination unit. So in this case, we're going to start off with yards. Often you will see that just as YD. I have a habit of adding the S. It's not a problem. We want to do yards to feet. Now, thankfully, there is a straight conversion from yards to feet. So what I will do is I'll kind of go ahead and write out the blanks that I need. And just this blank line right here. And I know that if yards here is in the numerator and I want to get rid of yards, I want to cancel yards and convert it to feet, then I know yards has to be in the denominator over here. Now why do I know that? Because anything divided by itself is 1. So that works for numbers and it works for units. And so in this case, if I divide yards by yards, I get 1. And that's what I'm wanting. A lot of times you'll hear teachers say, well, those units are going to end up canceling. And you may see a teacher write lines through there, and that can be very, very helpful. Well, there is a direct conversion from feet to yards, as I said, so I will just put feet over yards. Now here's the question. How many feet are in 1 yard? This is just 1 yard. There are 3 feet per yard. And so I multiply 12 times 3 and get 36. My yards canceled. The only unit left is feet. So I know that 12 yards is equal to 36 feet. Now it becomes a little more difficult, perhaps, when we go to our next example. I'm going to scroll up just a little. 2 miles equals 1 foot. 1 mile, and this is very helpful, is equal to 5,280 feet. That is one that's very helpful to just kind of log in the memory bank. So I'm going to use the same process. 2 miles, just MI, that's going to be over 1 times, and there's a direct conversion between miles and feet. So again, miles has to go on the bottom because miles divided by miles will give me 1. That will allow me to cancel my units. And I do know how many feet are in 1 mile. It's 5,280. You will notice the miles cancels. And 2 times 5,280 is 10,560. The only unit left is feet. So if I convert 2 miles to feet, I have now traveled 10,560 feet. Well, let's do some more. Let's switch to time. Let's see if this can become a little more complicated for us. We want to take days and go into seconds. Now, yes, there is a direct conversion, but odds are you're not going to know that. But you probably will know how many minutes are in a second, how many seconds are in a minute, how many minutes are in an hour, how many hours are in a day. And so that information, we can use the basics and walk through this process. And so what if we start with 2 days, and I'm going to put this over 1, times, okay, I don't know how many I need here, but I'm going to use more than 1. And what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to use 3. But let's just stop there for now. I know that days has to be in the denominator because I want my days to cancel. Well, what if I kept it simple and just go hours to days? I know how many hours are in days. The days have canceled now. Hours is in the numerator, so if I want hours to cancel, because remember, seconds is our destination. Hours has to go in the denominator here. Well, how many minutes are in an hour? So my hours canceled, and now I'm left with minutes. Minutes has to go in the denominator because minutes is in the numerator here, and I know how many seconds are in 1 minute. So the minutes are going to cancel. So let's go back and fill in some numbers. How many hours are in a day? There's 24 hours in 1 day. How many minutes are in 1 hour? There are 60 minutes in 1 hour. How many seconds are in 1 minute? There are 60. So you'll notice that all of my numbers that are not 1 are in the numerator. And this is where a calculator will come in handy. If I multiply 2 times 24 times 60 times 60, I'm going to get 172,800 seconds. Now I was thinking, oh my gosh, that number's so huge, it can't be correct. But no, think about it. 2 days is the larger unit of measure than seconds. It's a much larger unit of measure than seconds. So if I want to have an equivalent time, in other words, what we're saying here is 2 days equals this. In other words, those are the exact same time frame, exact same, down to the second. So when you're dealing with seconds, a smaller unit of measure, it's going to take a lot more of them to equal the larger unit of measure. And so I know this process can seem a little crazy at first, but I think if you just focus on the units first and keep down to the simple units, it might take more steps, but I think there'll be simpler steps. Let's scroll up and look at another example here. 30 miles per hour into feet per second. I would encourage you to pause the video before I work these and always try them on your own. 30 miles per hour. What if we wrote this just a little different and we said 30 mi for miles over 1 hour? That is still 30 miles per hour. We just wrote it differently. And now we want to go, this is feet per second. Feet per second, but this is how we write it. And so we need to convert. I know miles is the top and I'm trying to get to feet. So we're going to put miles in the denominator so that miles will divide by miles. I also know that there's a direct conversion from feet to miles. So now I've got miles removed and I'm dealing with feet. And so there's 5,280 feet per mile. Now I need to convert hours to second, but notice that hours is in the denominator, and this is a little different. So if I want to cancel hours, hours now has to go up in the numerator. Well, how many minutes are in 1 hour? So if there's 1 hour, I know I'm going to do 60 minutes. Yes, you could go straight to seconds from here, and that's perfectly fine. So now my hours will cancel. Minutes is in the denominator, so if I want to cancel it, I have to put minutes in the numerator. And second, and I know there are 60 seconds in 1 minute. So now, miles have canceled. I'm left with feet. Hours have canceled. Minutes have canceled, and I'm left with seconds. But where is seconds? It's in the denominator, and that's what I want. So this would give me feet per second. When you do the math, you multiply 30 times 5280, and then divide that by 3600, which is 60 times 60, you will get 44 feet per second. 44 feet per second. And so 30 miles per hour, which is a larger unit of measure, is the equivalent of 44 feet per second. It's fairly fast. So 44, 12 inches is a foot, 44 of those per second. So you're moving along pretty good. But I think this example is very helpful because it shows that sometimes the unit is in the bottom. They're not all over 1. You'll notice our previous examples, everything started over 1. But with this example, now we have it over a unit in the bottom. It's not a unitless number. Let's look at just one more example. We're going to go 60 meters per second to kilometers per hour. Let's see here. So let's start with 60. We're going to do meters, and we're going to go ahead and put seconds underneath. And we know we want to do meters to kilometers. Well, meters is in the numerator, so we have to put it in the denominator to cancel it. We want to go to kilometers. So in 1 kilometer, which is the larger, that's 1,000 meters. Remember, the K is kilo, which equals 1,000. All right, that's a helpful conversion to have in your mind. So now my meters have canceled, and I'm left with kilometers. So I have my distance unit, but what about time? I want to go seconds to hours. Seconds is in the denominator here, so I have to put it in the numerator. And let's go seconds per minute. And I want the minutes to cancel and then to hours. And so this will cancel my seconds, cancel my minutes, and I'm left with kilometers per hour. So there are 60 seconds in 1 minute, and there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. So in a case like this, to do the math, I take 60 and I divide by 1,000, and then I multiply that answer, that quotient, by the product of 60 times 60, which is 3,600. So I would take 60, divide by 1,000, and then multiply by 3,600. And when I do that, I get 216 kilometers per hour. 216 kilometers per hour. Students, unit conversion, dimensional analysis can be very frustrating, very confusing at times, but I encourage you to try to keep it simple and just use this process of canceling units. Cancel your units first, make sure it works, and then go back in and put the numbers. Hope this helps.